Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Let's call the meeting on equity, diversity, and inclusion to order. Let the record reflect that all committee members are present. First, I'm looking for motion on the minutes for February 12th.
I make a motion to approve the February 12th, 2025 minutes.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Public comment, I see nobody, but of course we'll keep that open for if there's anybody that comes and wants to speak. We only have one item on the agenda today, and that's kind of a follow-up discussion on an ordinance, either amendment or possibly repeal. That basically there's an ordinance on our books which has been outlined very nicely. 684.04, that no person shall enter into, engage in, peep into, open a door of any restroom which has a sign indicating the designation of the restroom or locker room for the use of the opposite sex. So that is a crime, basically, if you go into a restroom that's labeled to the opposite sex. And it's been brought to our attention that that is still on the books, and it's been brought straight to our committee to review it. Last week, we had a brief discussion with the individual and some suggestions, but basically we also asked the city attorney to just work and think with us. And I see that we have a draft, I guess, a repeal draft in front of us where we could either change the ordinance or we could repeal it, where we just take it off the books altogether, or we could do nothing. I guess I could just start by sharing my thoughts, and then we could just discuss it openly and decide if we want to take action at the end. So I think that we should consider repealing this altogether without replacing it. I think that there are, for the concerns, if there's anybody doing anything illegal in a bathroom, they can be trespassed. They can be asked to leave, told to leave. If they're using drugs, if they're doing anything obscene or whatever, that is on its own face grounds for some type of action that would get someone either criminally charged or removed from the building. I also feel like people who would be using the bathroom, that's what they're going to do. I don't think that there's going to be people that this might fall under where it's just going to be some shenanigans going on. I think that it's probably best that everybody who comes into City Hall and our city buildings can be comfortable in their own body and their own skin. And by repealing this ordinance, I think that it could make people more comfortable and also comply with some of our human rights ordinance in chapter 297. But those are just my initial thoughts, and I can open it up if anybody wants to add anything. Sir.
Mr. Chair, I have no problem with the rationale for the draft ordinance in front of us. I would say dropped on our lap with the notice of this committee with not a lot of time to prepare. I would be interested in what the county policy is on this. I think they're pretty inclusive and probably have run through HRC and other advocate groups that might include voices of trans folks. I'd be interested in supporting any solution that destigmatizes the use of public restrooms in our city. This is a good first attempt, and without looking at other sources of guidance, I would be willing to support this. But I do think it's a conversation that does merit at least a little bit of comparison and research to see how we're in line with even parks within our city that are run by the county, or public facilities in our city that are run by the county. I think they're a good example to see how they've done it, perhaps even taking over East Lansing. I agree this is outdated. And even with the constituent that contacted you, I think the intention of the law was probably at one time well-intended and good faith attempt to promote safety, but obviously in a world where we're trying to be more inclusive and accessible, this is not the way to do it. So I'm happy to help move the process forward, but I would be very interested in taking a look at the surrounding municipalities to see if there is a different way to go forward than a straight up repeal. If there's ways we can actually maybe write affirmative language as well. Does that make sense?
It does. Do you want
Go ahead.
to speak? So affirmative language, I mean, we're open and we can talk about it. I almost feel like, I don't know what affirmative language can be inserted that like destigmatizes. It almost seems like the more a language in there is like the more it's a thing. It almost seems like if it's nothing, then there's no like further question. And if there's ever a complaint ever, which I don't know if there would be, I suspect there wouldn't. Again, like what would a complaint be, that someone went in there, that someone was doing something? Bathroom only takes so short of a time. I don't know, but I'm open to, because that is something we did ask for, is like to compare and contrast. We asked for that 2 weeks ago. In the meantime, just thinking on my own, because we didn't discuss it, I was thinking that like the sooner we get it off the books, the better it is. But at the same time, what's a couple extra weeks?
That's, I don't mean to step on, sorry.
You didn't, go ahead.
And I'm hearkening back to like my first week on city council. I found an outdated ordinance and went to repeal it and found out there were a lot of strings we pulled by doing that. We walked it back, and Ingham County in 2019 adopted an inclusive bathroom policy, which I think we should take a look at as maybe an alternative. As I said, if this was the only option on the table, I'd be comfortable with this, but I think maybe taking a look at the sanitary code in Ingham County as which is inclusive and does speak to gender identity and as a means to be more inclusive, I would be more comfortable with that. At least having on the table to compare. Sure. And this is obviously the first meeting we've had on this topic. Second? Oh, I was gone.
Yeah.
My bad.
It was just broad. It wasn't like on the,
Got it.
on the, yeah.
I'll be open to participate in moving this forward as well. It is outdated. I do want to make sure we do our due diligence, but I don't have a problem with looking at and doing comparisons across the board.
One thing I recall from some time on council was when we had the bathrooms, and then we needed a third. And I think that they decided somewhere in this building on one of these floors is supposed to be a all-inclusive family bathroom. So I think that exists, but at the same time, even if it exists, it would probably be my position that we should still take it off the books.
I'll tell you, not tongue in cheek here. I mean, on this floor, I've apparently unwillingly broken the law using the available restroom that was single use, but designated for women. So, you know what I mean?
Well, as an officer of this fine city,
I did.
city attorney must now take.
I did have permission from fellow council members, but not to make light of the issue, but I do know that the sanitary code in Ingham County does include a gender inclusive provision that I believe was 2019 when they adopted it. And would be happy to take a look at that and see.
Sure.
I'm sorry, I missed the last
No.
discussion. If there was more that was said back then I'm stalling this conversation.
Nope,
I
it was just
apologize.
presented, so you're good.
Well, I suppose we'll open up to the city attorney for a moment, and just if you have anything to add or anything that you might have noticed when you were thinking or looking at this over the last couple of weeks.
Right. So the reason our office OCA recommended the repealer as opposed to anything else is that our ordinance 68404 is purely a criminal ordinance. And so all it does, it doesn't talk about what restrooms city facilities have to have. It's not about restroom accessibility in general. It is literally just a criminal prohibition against basically anyone using any restroom anywhere in the city, public or private, that is, I think the language I have here is that has a sign posted indicating or designating the restroom or locker room is for the use of the opposite sex. And so the way we looked at it is there's really no way to make it inclusive without basically repealing the criminal
Okay.
nature of it. There's no, it would be essentially, it would make it so open-ended that no one would ever be able to violate it. And if you have a criminal law that no one can violate, you might as well just not have
Oh.
the ordinance.
That
And
makes
so it's just part of the criminal code. It's just criminalizing the use of the bathroom by a person of the opposite sex. And so the best way to get rid of that is just to get rid of it. And then there's no criminal provision about using a bathroom whatsoever.
Or any criminal provision, well, I guess we'll have to look at it if, from a county standpoint?
No,
Okay.
it's,
But there is something.
there's something.
So we could, what we do could either be one part or it could be potentially two parts.
Hearing that explanation, I have no problem with repealing the criminality of the situation.
And then just thinking right now, do we want to still explore like some type of, not ordinance, but policy or something like Ingham has or East Lansing, or at least consider, like explore doesn't mean do it, it just means look at
It's
it.
still outdated.
Because I don't know, we can leave that open.
Well, I think regardless, it'd be a separate section of law. So, I mean,
Right.
knowing that the other committee members have already had a discussion on this and now being briefed on sort of the nuance of what we're looking at, what I said is a separate track than what you're attempting, Mr. Chair. So,
Sure. And I do appreciate that
Mhm.
because it is probably, out of anybody, our responsibility to look at, well, I guess it would ultimately say it's the mayor's because of this buildings and all that, but
because I would argue too that this law would not preclude a trans woman from using a woman's restroom. But I still don't think it should be a criminal offense if, I use the restroom here in the city.
sure. So I guess if we're comfortable, we can vote today because then we have to still talk about it with everybody. And someone may want to table it or kick it back and then we will be happy to do that probably.
Yeah, but I think your explanation of the nuance between what I was talking about and what we're doing was very helpful.
Thank you, Martin.
That's all right.
All
All right.
Peters, you're here, right?
I mean,
Between the three of us.
As far as I
it
know,
has to
you
be.
are, so, yes.
I am Ron. So we will set this for introduction on March 24th. I personally won't be here, but maybe one of the committee members can pick it up for us.
I'll be there. I can talk about it unless you prefer to.
And if everything goes smoothly, it looks like Sherry's telling me there's potentially a hearing on April 7th. So that's also for the public, if anybody has some opinions or some comments, they are always welcome in this public forum. Nobody's here today, but that doesn't mean work isn't gonna happen.
And the way it falls, after the hearing on the 7th, 2 days later, you guys will have it back, so. The night of the hearing, you'll be able to let the public know that,
And on the 9th, we can.
you want to advise law of that, so that they can start working on it. Because
Well,
I can throw
I
anything
guess
on the
for-
agenda.
For the committee though, so this would be more like, because see, it's gonna come down to, I think, if we made something that's PI, city council policy, I bet you law is gonna end up saying, well, it doesn't matter because it's really like, we don't get to make the policy of the buildings or the city, Because of policy versus an ordinance, because we're talking about ordinances when we repeal, but the policy stuff might fall into the administration.
Well, my request would be maybe have law look at the county sanitary policy as it pertains to inclusive bathroom usage and see if there is an ordinance or something that we could, that we should, if it would be appropriate for an ordinance. That makes sense.
Yes, I would second that request.
Because it may be, we only have jurisdiction over city buildings.
Yeah.
You know, the mayor has put feminine hygiene products in city
Mhm.
restrooms, not in public restrooms.
Yeah, and I agree, that's probably gonna be the case. So that's great, we can have something else important to look at.
I will take that back to the city attorney.
Anything else to talk about?
I would just need a formal motion, since you can't make the motion to introduce and set the public hearing.
I would move.
Thank you.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
There was one thing I probably should have called you. So you know how we did that great job of remote conversation?
Remote participation.
Yeah, so we haven't gotten many people, right?
Yeah.
Do you think we can bring the time limit down and see what happens? Like, we were gonna look at that.
Do you get a lot of like last minute, I wish I could participate?
It's like nobody, right?
Only for what? Committee
Committee
meetings?
It's for everything.
Oh, you talking about for everything?
Well, no, for
Sometime on
committee,
committees.
committee of the whole and council, you have to register 4 hours beforehand, and it's in the link, and you have to sign up, and I never get anybody in Cal. And I've never got anybody call me at the last minute at 5 o'clock. Here, you don't have to sign up, you can just
Mhm.
come in, so.
We don't have to
I mean,
talk about
I'm
it.
happy to look at it. I mean, I just, again, my thoughts have always been with the people that have to operationalize this.
Yeah, and I can follow up with the clerk's office, because they handle the council meeting,
Yeah.
and they have had people that have remoted in, so I don't know if it's been.
It
4 hours.
seems like
And then-
I've only seen maybe a couple people.
Which hasn't been a lot, but it does occasionally happen,
Where they do it or where they miss the deadline?
where they actually,
Okay.
but, I think, yeah, only happened a couple times where someone's missed the deadline. They just refer them to the next meeting.
Oh, okay.
We can think about that. It'll probably be, when I see other, I'll probably bring it up next time.
Yeah, I just couldn't remember if it's 4 hours.
It's 4 hours for Cal. Is it 4 hours for council?
Or,
Do you know what the charter is?
30 minutes before.
So I can follow up with the
Wow.
clerk's office on the charter and find out how
Yeah,
many people
I
they
mean-
get for the charter. And if people are coming in right at 30 minutes, or if they're registering in well in advance.
As long as, I mean, I committed to making a data-driven decision. And if we had a few people miss the deadline and the clerk's office can handle it, there's no reason not to change it.
Well, maybe that'll be one of our topics in the future. I don't know if it'll be next or the next or whatever. Maybe one of the times we don't have a.
'Cause that's can this committee change rules? It has to go through
That's your operations. So you can make a recommendation, like you guys
Yeah.
can do a quick little report or memo or minutes, and then I can just get that
Yeah.
to operations, but.
No, and President Cost was also interested in revisiting this topic, so I don't see an issue.
Well, thank you. Anybody else have anything for the good of the committee? Adjourned.
4:48.
Do you mind if I ask